The most powerful force in the universe is compound interest. The second most powerful is the thing that controls where that interest flows. Anonymous, scrawled on a napkin found in a Washington, D.C. hotel room. The day Maya Reyes understood money was the day she watched her father cry. She was 17 years old. It was a Tuesday in October, the kind of gray, bone-cold Tuesday that Pittsburgh specializes in, where the sky looks like old dishwater and the Monongahela River moves like it's tired of existing. She came home from school to find her father, Eduardo Reyes, sitting at the kitchen table in his work clothes, still wearing his steel-toed boots, staring at a letter. He was a big man, broad-shouldered, calloused-handed, the kind of man who had spent 22 years guiding molten steel at the Clairton plant. He had survived 2 rounds of layoffs, a broken collarbone, and the slow death of American manufacturing with his dignity perfectly intact. Maya had never once seen him look small. He looked small now. The letter was from the pension fund administrator. It informed Eduardo Reyes, in the careful, bloodless language that institutions use when they are destroying lives, that the Steelworkers Pension Collective, the fund into which he had contributed a portion of every paycheck for 22 years, had suffered catastrophic losses due to exposure to mortgage-backed securities and collateralized debt obligations. The fund was insolvent. His expected pension of $2,300 per month had been reduced to $340. $340 a month. He had built things with his hands for 22 years. He had traded time and labor and the slow erosion of his body for the promise of security. And somewhere, in a glass tower in Manhattan or Chicago or London, someone had taken that promise and fed it into a machine that turned human futures into financial instruments and the financial instruments into ash. Maya sat down next to her father. She put her hand over his enormous, rough hand. She didn't say anything because there was nothing to say. But something hardened inside her that day. A cold, precise, dangerous thing. Not anger exactly. Anger was too hot, too imprecise. This was more like a resolution, a vow made without words. I am going to understand how this happened, and then I am going to explain it to everyone who doesn't. Maya Reyes went to the University of Pittsburgh on a partial scholarship and spent 4 years studying economics and journalism simultaneously, treating them as 2 halves of the same language. While her friends studied for exams, she read Federal Reserve meeting transcripts. While they went to parties, she traced the ownership structure of media companies back through holding companies and shell corporations until she found names she recognized. Names that appeared on political donor lists, on corporate boards, on the guest registries of exclusive conferences in Davos and Jackson Hole. She understood something that most people her age didn't. Financial complexity is not accidental. It is designed. The labyrinthine structure of modern finance, the layers of derivatives and special purpose vehicles and offshore entities and regulatory arbitrage, was not the natural evolution of a free market. It was architecture. Someone had drawn those blueprints. And those blueprints benefited some people enormously while costing other people, people like her father, everything. She graduated in 2013 and spent 3 years at a financial news outlet in New York, writing the kind of technically competent but professionally neutered stories that corporate journalism demands. She broke no major stories. She offended no major advertisers. She learned everything she could about how financial journalism worked, and more importantly, how it was constrained. Then, in 2016, she quit. She started the Wealth Chronicle in a studio apartment in Brooklyn with a second-hand laptop, a coffee maker, and a burning conviction that ordinary people deserve to understand the financial forces shaping their lives. The name was deliberate. A chronicle was not a newspaper. It didn't just report what happened today and forget it tomorrow. A chronicle was a record, cumulative, historical. The chronicle said, "We are keeping track. We remember. Everything connects to everything else. And we are going to show you the connections." The first issue of the Wealth Chronicle was a 4,000-word explanation of how a pension fund collapses. She sent it to 47 people. Her mother forwarded it to a Facebook group. Someone posted it on Reddit. By the end of the week, 12,000 people had read it. By the end of the month, she had 80,000 subscribers. By the end of the year, she had received her first legal threat, her first death threat, her first offer of acquisition from a media company she immediately recognized as being 3 ownership layers away from a private equity firm she had written critically about. She framed the acquisition offer, hung it next to the legal threat, both on the wall behind her desk, where she could see them while she worked. The Wealth Chronicle was not for sale. That was the whole point. Every serious financial journalist eventually reaches the same destination. You start following the money. Any money, it doesn't matter where you start. And if you follow it long enough, carefully enough, through enough layers of ownership and management and custodianship, you arrive at the same place. BlackRock, Inc. headquarters, 50 Hudson Yards, Manhattan. Founded 1988. Originally a bond risk management firm started by Larry Fink and 7 partners in a single room. By 2024, the largest asset manager in the history of human civilization, with approximately $10 trillion in assets under management. $10 trillion. Maya had written that figure in a newsletter once, and then spent an entire paragraph trying to help readers grasp it, because the human brain simply isn't built to process numbers at that scale. She'd written, if you spent $1 million every single day, it would take you 2,739 years to spend $1 trillion. BlackRock manages 10 of those. But the raw size was almost the least interesting thing about BlackRock. What fascinated Maya, what kept her up at night, filling notebooks with org charts and ownership webs and cross-reference board memberships, was the structural position BlackRock occupied in the global financial system. She had documented it in a series of chronicle pieces over 2 years. The ownership web. Through its index funds and ETFs, BlackRock was one of the top 3 shareholders in approximately 90% of S&P 500 companies. Not majority owner, but top 3, which meant that in almost every major American corporation, BlackRock sat in the room. BlackRock's votes counted at shareholder meetings. BlackRock's preferences shaped executive compensation packages and board compositions and strategic priorities. When Larry Fink wrote his annual letter to CEOs, a letter that hundreds of corporate leaders reportedly read with great attention, it wasn't because he was a wise man sharing thoughts. It was because he represented a voting bloc that no public company could afford to ignore. The Aladdin system. This was the one that kept Maya awake. BlackRock had developed a proprietary risk management I called Aladdin, the asset, liability, debt, and derivative investment network. It was originally built to manage BlackRock's own risk exposure. But over decades, other institutions had begun paying BlackRock to run their portfolios through Aladdin's calculations as well. Pension funds, insurance companies, sovereign wealth funds, and asset managers all relied on BlackRock's Aladdin system, which monitored risk across more than $20 trillion in assets, giving the firm visibility into institutions larger than most national economies. If Aladdin moved, markets felt it. Maya had also traced the revolving door between BlackRock and top government bodies like the Federal Reserve, the Treasury, and the European Central Bank. During COVID-19, the Fed even hired BlackRock to manage emergency bond programs, blurring the line between advisor and beneficiary. When she reported on it, legal threats followed. More recently, she tracked BlackRock's expansion into single-family housing, buying homes at scale and reshaping the market. She thought she understood the company until a 3:17 a.m. anonymous email arrived with a 340-page file titled BR_omnibus_final.pdf and 4 chilling words. They own everything, everyone. The document appeared authentic. It outlined how sheer scale allowed BlackRock's decisions to shape markets like gravity shaping weather. Aladdin's synchronized risk signals could trigger self-fulfilling market moves, legal, automated, powerful. It mapped a vast global influence network across governments and institutions. Most alarming was Project Rebalancing, targeting April 14th, a coordinated legal portfolio shift designed to pressure sovereign debt markets and force central bank responses. Behind it all was Keystone, a long-term strategy to position BlackRock as the indispensable partner to governments facing fiscal collapse. Then, a man named Warren Cole met her. He confirmed the file was real, but warned it was incomplete. Rebalancing wasn't just an event. It was a demonstration. Publish without context, he said, and it would cause panic, not reform. But contingency planning prepares for events, the source said. Keystone started preparing the conditions for them. What began as risk modeling evolved into identifying pressure points in sovereign debt and pensions, and timing massive portfolio shifts to amplify stress. Not to crash the system, they insisted, but to create dependency. When crises hit, governments would turn to the one institution big enough to manage the fallout. April 14th is a demonstration, the source said. A controlled burn, proof of capability. Maya asked why they leaked it. Because no private firm should be able to design inevitability for governments, they replied. And because if you publish this wrong, it causes panic. If you publish it right, it creates limits. Maya realized the file wasn't just a story. It was a choice. But at some point, I think around 2018, 2019, I can't pinpoint exactly, the framing shifted. The question stopped being, what do we do if the world changes? And became, how do we ensure that when the world changes, we are indispensable to the response? And they stopped, gathered themselves. That's a different question. That's not contingency planning. That's strategy. That's intentional positioning for an outcome you expect to profit from. Is that illegal? Maya asked. It was a genuine question, not a rhetorical one. No, the source said. And that was the answer that had clearly kept them awake, that had driven them from troubled compliance to this parking garage. That's the thing. Every individual decision is defensible. Every portfolio move is justifiable. Every relationship, every advisory role, every revolving door placement. None of it crosses a line that exists in current law. They met her eyes. The problem isn't that they're breaking the rules. The problem is that they've made themselves so large, so embedded, so necessary that the rules no longer apply to them in any meaningful sense. You can't regulate an entity that has become load-bearing infrastructure. You can't let it fail because the failure would be catastrophic. And you can't let something that cannot be allowed to fail operate without democratic accountability. That's too big to fail, Maya said. Except for everything, not just banks. Yes. The word came out with the quiet force of something long understood, but rarely spoken aloud. And Project Rebalancing is a demonstration of exactly that principle. The April 14th moves are real. The modeling is real. The effect on European markets will be real. But the most important thing about it isn't the market impact. It's the response. When central banks have to react, when governments have to call, when every financial institution running on Aladdin looks to BlackRock for guidance on what the signals mean. The demonstration isn't for the public. It's for regulators. It's a message. Look what we can do. Now imagine you tried to constrain us. Maya wrote in her notebook, leverage through indispensability. The source didn't look guilty, just resolved. Cole believed in slow reform, they said. But the gap between BlackRock's power and regulation had only grown. I decided the public deserves to know, the source said. Their parents had trusted retirement funds shaped by Aladdin, a system with no democratic mandate. There's no villain. That's the problem. Show people the machine. Show them it has no off switch. They handed Maya an encrypted USB. The password was the last line of her first article about her father. "I'll do it justice," she promised. The next 10 days were relentless. Maya and her small team verified every claim in the Keystone files. A cybersecurity expert confirmed the documents were authentic and consistent with BlackRock's internal systems. Cole warned her about timing. Publish before April 14th, and Project Rebalancing might be canceled. Regulators would lose proof. Publish after, and pension holders would absorb the shock. They deserved to know, Maya said. On day 9, she chose April 9th, 5 days early. Enough time for regulators to act, not enough time for the story to fade. She wrote for 16 straight hours, 19,000 words. No villains, no exaggeration, just the mechanism, scale, synchronization, governance, and the strategy of becoming indispensable. Not a panic, a chronicle. She titled it, "The Invisible Hand: How One Firm Became the Architecture of the Global Economy, and Why No One Gave You a Vote." At the end, she added a section called, "What This Means for You," explaining in plain language how readers could check their pension or retirement exposure, where to seek legal help, and what regulatory efforts were underway. The story went live at 6 a.m. on April 9th. By noon, 3 million people had read it. U.S. senators and a member of European Parliament cited it in speeches. By afternoon, the Senate Banking Committee announced emergency hearings on systemic risk tied to asset managers. BlackRock called the piece sensationalist and questioned the document's authenticity, but did not sue. European regulators opened coordinated inquiries into Aladdin's market impact. At 8:23 p.m., Maya received a text. They canceled it. April 14th isn't happening. She replied with one word. Good. Nothing resolved neatly. The Senate hearing was tense. BlackRock testified calmly. Lawmakers struggled to pin down a system that wasn't illegal, just enormous. A formal proposal for new oversight emerged. Its future remained uncertain. The source resigned and joined a nonprofit focused on financial reform. Cole told Maya, "You did it right." Her father read the piece. "I don't understand all the words," he told her, "but I understand that somebody's keeping track." For Maya, that was enough. Maya hired 4 new team members, 2 investigative reporters, a data analyst, and a former private equity attorney who said she had seen enough to switch sides. The Chronicle expanded beyond investigations into financial literacy, explainers, toolkits, and plain language guides to a system shaping everyday lives. After the BlackRock expose, more tips arrived. Anonymous packages, encrypted emails, even a handwritten envelope from a concerned actuary. Each was a thread, and Maya pulled everyone. The machine was vast, built over decades by smart people pursuing rational goals inside a system with too few guardrails. No single architect, no single villain, no single story big enough to contain it. But that was the purpose of a chronicle. Not a verdict, not a moment. A record, cumulative and unceasing. They built it piece by piece. Maya Reyes wrote in the opening of the Wealth Chronicle's 4th anniversary letter to subscribers. So we document it piece by piece. They have patience and capital and the structural advantages of complexity. We have clarity, and we have each other, and we have the stubborn conviction that people who understand what is being done to them are harder to do it to. That's why we're here. That's why we keep count. That's why the Wealth Chronicle will never stop.